Yarn sensitivity is really important to consider, obviously, if you're making something for yourself, but also a lot of people who aren't incredibly sensitive to materials tend to forget it's really important when you're gifting something to somebody. So a little education moment. I will have all my resources linked in the description if you want to learn more, but I just want to talk about what makes yarn itchy. When you look at wool fibers under a microscope, they have itty bitty little scales, and some of these scales can be a little bit prickly. They almost look like fingernails, and for some, it's kind of like when you cut your fingernail in a certain way, and then it's all of a sudden like even sharper, even though you just cut it, versus other yarns where it's a little bit more rounded, and it's like when you file nicely rounded fingernails. Is this fingernail description gross? Am I saying the word fingernail too much? Another thing that can contribute to itchiness is the staple length of a fiber. So staple length refers to how long are the actual fibers that are being spun together. So a shorter staple length means that you have a lot more ends prickling about, prepared to make your skin crawl. A longer staple length means you just have fewer of these ends to contribute to the itchiness. Something important to consider here is if you are more than just itchy, like if you're also getting like swelling eyes or watering eyes or tiredness or coughing or sneezing, any sort of allergy symptoms when you're working on certain projects, it might just be more than itchiness alone, and you may actually be allergic to the type of fiber that you're working with. Allergies with wool is kind of complicated. It's more common to be allergic to the lanolin in wool. So lanolin is like a waxy, oily substance, is naturally occurring and makes wool fiber resistant to water. Getting into spinning techniques. Woolen spun yarns can be itchier than worsted spun yarn. This is because woolen spun yarn has fibers kind of sticking out in different directions, just prepared to poke you. And worsted spun yarns tend to be aligned more parallel, so they're just in order a little bit more and the ends aren't as exposed. Synthetic fibers, especially low quality ones, can sometimes actually feel itchy. Just want to note here, I am not against synthetic fibers. There is a place for every fiber, each exists for a reason. I personally will just tell you that I have a sensitivity to synthetic yarns. I've tried high-end ones, I've tried low-end ones, and a lot of them have this like squeaky character to them that I cannot stand from a sensory perspective. So it's not like it itches or is uncomfortable on the skin, it just makes my teeth hurt. People that have certain like sensory icks may understand what I'm talking about here. But if you've never experienced this, it sounds kind of crazy. You've just been glaring at me for not petting you, and that is fair. A quick note that not all yarn is made the same. There have been like non-superwash merinos that I've touched and they feel like butter, and there have been others made of the same fiber content type that I've touched and they feel like sandpaper. A lot of that plays into the quality of the raw material itself as well as the manufacturing process used, which is not something you can always tell by looking at a label, and you'll only know when you work with it. So that's another note, is like, don't feel bad if you've worked with something and by the end of it you're like, dang it, this is itchy. How did I not catch that earlier? Sometimes you can't tell until you've worked up an entire project and put it on and have been wearing it for a second. You two starting a kerfuffle. My cats are kerfuffling. So I'll get into specific yarn brands later on in the video, but I want to talk about like general fiber content. Starting with wool or like animal derived fibers. Alpaca, cashmere, which is goat's wool, and llama wool are better for people that have a lanolin allergy, and they also tend to be the softer yarns. Generally, okay? I know some people, you're typing away with your little fingers and you're like, I tried this yarn and it feels like butter and I've never itched a day in my life. We're speaking from a general perspective. Please know that. Hey, no, it's all fun and games until someone starts... What can I throw at you? Hey. No. When someone meows, that's the end of it, okay? They're both instigators, both of them. Again, in the world of wools, superwash merino tends to be a little bit less itchy than like a non-superwash merino due to the fact that it's been chemically processed to dull the scales on the fiber, and a polymer is applied to the wool to protect it from heat. I will link a video from Wool Needle's Hands diving into the world of superwash merino and all the things to consider and pros and cons, because that is a whole discussion we do not have time for. Now, it's not a wool, but I'm gonna stick it in this section. We're gonna talk about silk yarn. It is the only material that I will be discussing in this video that I have not actually used myself. I haven't even touched it before. So all I can say is that I have been told that silk is incredibly smooth and buttery and silky, but I've also heard that it can be a little bit rough, but I haven't heard anything about it being itchy or not. So if you are familiar or work a lot with silk yarn, please input your opinions and educate the rest of us. Why are my arms like this? Why am I doing T-Rex arms? Let's talk about plant-based fiber. Cotton is generally soft unless it's like incredibly low quality, in which case it can be a little bit rough, but not necessarily itchy. And I think the distinction is important. And I will mention that I do have somewhat of a tolerance for rough yarn, but I don't have any tolerance for itch. So I will tell you if I like a certain yarn, but it might be a little bit rough. I'm sure that there are itchy cottons out there. I just haven't run into a cotton before that I didn't like. A linen or linen blend, it can be a little bit rough, but it generally softens up really well over time. So if you finish a garment that's made of primarily linen fibers and you're finding it a bit rough, I would recommend washing it and like beating the hell out of it. And that's because with linen, there's a fun little binder material going on within the fibers, and you kind of need to break that up in order to get it to like relax and soften up. Still, if you like go to touch a linen yarn and you're just like, ew, then I wouldn't expect washing it to work miracles. And that's why I tend to go for a linen blend, usually a linen that has been blended with like bamboo viscose or cotton onto bamboo viscose. Bamboo viscose, sometimes just called the general term of viscose, which applies to a lot of different plant-based fibers, or just like bamboo. It's a semi-synthetic material because the bamboo needs to undergo quite a bit of processing in order to get it to be bamboo yarn. So it's been a little bit controversial in the world of sustainability. However, it is generally incredibly soft and like has a silky, shiny quality to it usually. Now on to specific yarn. So Drops Daisy and Drops Extra Fine Superwash Merino are very similar to a beginner or someone who's like just starting to play around with yarn. These are virtually indistinguishable. In fact, this sweater I accidentally made with both Drops Daisy and Drops Extra Fine Superwash Merino, because I reached into my stash and they were all like the same color and I didn't bother looking at the labels. And you know, this sleeve is Superwash, this sleeve is Drops Daisy, and it kind of well defines what the differences are. So once it's been worked up and washed, the Superwash Merino from Drops, it can be a little squeaky, but not a ton. Like I have a sweater made with the Drops Extra Fine Superwash Merino. That is a bit of a mouthful. And it's a little squeaky, so I don't really reach for it, but it's not terrible. I still wear it and I'm comfortable. It just, sometimes it pops in my head when I'm wearing it, where I'm like, ooh, I didn't like whatever that was. But again, it's not enough to stop me from wearing it. Drops Daisy is incredibly soft. The main downside to it, because it's a non-superwash merino, is it does pill a lot. So this sleeve, I finished this just like 2 months ago maybe, and it's already pilling like an insane amount. Hey little Stitch, why are you all messed up? Maybe a cat claw got into you? I feel like the sweater is a really good experiment for me into seeing how the two yarns age over time. As far as itchiness goes, this is incredibly high up on the collar and I do not find this itchy at all. I'm gonna use a 1 to 10 scale and I'm gonna say 10 is like incredibly itchy, like a straight up itchiest mohair in the whole wide world. And a 0 is like bamboo yarn of like, you couldn't make it itchy if you tried. On that scale, I would put these at like a 3 or a 3. I would put them at a 3. Hey, stop it. There's maybe a hint of an itch, but for most people it's undetectable and potentially not enough to be bothered by. We have Hobie Happy Place, which is a cotton merino blend, and also the Drops cotton merino blend. For both of these, very, very little itch. I would say they're probably at a 2. If anything, I think the Happy Place might be a tiny bit itchier, but that could also just be because I haven't really washed it enough. So the only finished object I've done is one that I finished in December. And I've only worn this a couple times and it's also incredibly high up on the neck. So I might be unfairly judging it as a little bit itchy when I just need to wash it a couple more times and wear it. It's not enough to prevent me from working with it, and I would still feel comfortable making a turtleneck out of it if I felt like making turtlenecks. but I typically don't. Like, this is about as high as I want my necklines going. It is really soft. The one thing I will say for distinguishing features between the two is I think Happy Place has a tendency to get a little bit fluffier over time. So it's not quite pilling, but maybe it is pilling. I think it has a tendency to do that a little bit more than the Drops Cotton Merino. Drops Alpaca Boucle. I don't find this very itchy at all. I'd say it's probably like a 2. This is a sweater knit up entirely with Drops Alpaca Boucle. I didn't use any other fibers along with this, and I find it to be just a smidge itchy, maybe a 3.5. Just because it naturally, the way boucle is made, it just has a lot more fibers kind of poking out at you. But again, this is very high neckline, and I really have minimal issue wearing this. Knitting for Olive Merino. A disclaimer on this one is the only finished object I have with this material is a V-neck. I have worn this without like anything but a bra underneath, so I've had it with direct skin contact, and I don't find it incredibly itchy. I do think it's rough. It's not like a soft buttery yarn, but I also don't think it's quite itchy. I would say it's also a 3 like the boucle, but it might seem like it's itchy just because it's rough. So I don't mind it. I would absolutely make a full sweater out of it if I could afford to do so. It's not cheap. But the colors, man, they have such pretty colors. That's why people like them. Drops Belle is a cotton linen viscose blend. I really love this yarn. I will say the only finished objects I've done with it, I've only had for like less than a year. It's a more recent addition to my stash, so I can't attest to how it ages over the years, but in general, I feel like it's aging really, really well. This is one of the most comfortable tops in my collection. It sits pretty high up on the neckline. I feel like it doesn't have that like pilling or fluffing issue. With plant fibers, it's not necessarily pilling that's an issue with me. It's like this fluffing and overall like halo that it gets over time. So the Happy Place gets more of that halo. This one doesn't. Really soft, no itch to me at all. And it's not really rough. I think when I first worked with it, the first couple projects, I was like, okay, this is pretty rough. But after washing it just a couple of times, that roughness absolutely went away. Yeah, this is my other project that I finished with that. Oh, I have an end to weave in. Okay, just don't look at that. This is another project I did with it in crochet, and I still need to wash this like a couple of times. I've washed it once or twice so far, and it's softening up, but it's still a little bit rougher. It's pretty soft. I don't know what I'm saying. It's pretty soft. It's just not as soft as the other ones. So I think once I wash this a couple more times, it's gonna get even softer. I am guessing that this is gonna age really well. All right, True Boo, this is the Viscose Bamboo by Lion Brand. Quick correction here, I call this viscose yarn when it's actually rayon from bamboo, and I do this again when I go to talk about Kobu yarn later on, so remember this. And there is a slight difference. Both are semi-synthetic materials, but there are differences in the manufacturing process and the material themselves and how they hold up over time. I found a really good website called Green Hive where they discuss the differences in a way that's incredibly easy to understand, so I will link that below, and it's a very quick read that I absolutely recommend. I do have a finished object with it, just not on hand. It's a hat that I made. Not itchy at all. It feels very, very silky. It is pretty dense and hefty, so just know that it might be better with like a tank top or something a little bit lacier. Like, I would avoid doing really dense stitch types with this just because it can get really heavy really fast. I am intrigued. I would like to make a sweater, but I don't know if I have enough to make a sweater with. It's so soft. This is a 0 on the itchy scale. Oh, that's where one of my earrings went. Okay. Well, you're just gonna live there, I guess. I don't feel like untangling you. So we have 2 different cashmeres here. This is Tahiti cashmere. I got this off of Amazon a couple years ago because I wanted a more budget-friendly cashmere option. And then here is the Dream in Color cashmere. So the Tahiti cashmere, it's pretty soft. I would say it's a 2 on the itchiness scale, but I can definitely tell the quality difference between this and the Dream in Color cashmere. And we have another correction. Can you tell I struggle with attention to detail? So I lost the tag for the Dream in Color Smooshy Cashmere a few years ago and didn't realize that it's actually only 20% cashmere, which explains why I find it to be softer and not as itchy than the Tahiti cashmere. And just a quick note for cashmere and alpaca in general, because I don't think I drove the point home hard enough in this video, that both are incredibly soft. Always. They're like almost always incredibly soft, but they are the most likely to to trick you because cashmere and alpaca both, when you touch them on the ball, when you touch them after you've worked them up, as you're working with it, feel very soft and it's very hard to detect any itch. And then you go to put them on and all of a sudden you're like, wow, why does it feel like a billion needles are touching me? So that's not always the case. Again, it's really mostly for people with extremely sensitive skin that this happens. But it's a point I wish I had driven harder in the video. So I'm doing it now. This is a top I made, my first ever YouTube video. If you want to see the details on this, it's my wallflower top based on one that Emma Watson wore in Perks of Being a Wallflower. This is a turtley turtleneck. It is very high up and tight on the neck with twisted rib. So you would expect it to be itchy. It's probably like a 2. It just holds up really well. I really love this top. I should wear it more. I need a bra to wear with this. That's my main issue with this one. And then the Tahiti cashmere, I still like it, but I don't know if it's entirely worth the cost. This is Drops Air, and the label is absolutely falling out. Let's stick that back in. Drops Air. It's an alpaca blown yarn, which just means it's like imagine a tube made of cotton netting, and they stuff it with alpaca fibers. I would say this is a 3 on the itchiness scale. It's just on the line. So I think if I work on future projects involving this yarn, I'm definitely going to opt for stuff with like a little bit lower of a neckline, but it's also not so itchy that I'm not going to make sweaters out of it, period. I've also made a balaclava that hugs really tight on the neck, and I find it a little bit itchy, but I still wear it constantly in the winter. Do with that information what you will. This is a sweater that I've made with Drops Air. I wear it all the time, and the neckline is just low enough. See, it doesn't need to be incredibly low, but just not a super high neckline. This is the Karen Blossom Cake yarn. I didn't feel like diving into my bag of garbage yarn to fish it out. I don't mean that it's like trash yarn in the bag. I just mean it's yarn that I'm not going to use. I should find a nicer name for that bag. I've made several projects for this. I really, really wanted to like it. This one is so squeaky. I can't handle it. It's such a squeaky material. No, it's not itchy though. So I've talked about this before. Some people have said that they're really sensitive to materials and they do not have any issue with this whatsoever. So it should be fine for you. I really wanted to love it. I wish it wasn't squeaky. I tried so hard. I did bulky projects and loose knit projects and this and everything. It's just a little too squeaky for me to enjoy. But it's also a 3. So I think if you're listening to some of what I'm saying and you're like, oh, you said that wasn't very itchy, but I found it a little itchy, then that one might be on the line for you. That one's like just below the line for me. All right, I'm gonna do a quick parade of the sock yarns that I've purchased just because I have the same thing to say about all of them. They're all between a 2 and a 3 on the itchiness scale. I have not made finished like tops with them. I've done maybe socks with them before, so I can't truly attest to how itchy they are, but I think they're around a 2 or a 3. And they are all either non-superwash or superwash merino combined with nylon. So this is the Hedgehog Fibers sock blend. These are all their sock blends. This is spun right round. They're tough sock. I've worked a swatch with this one, but I haven't made a finished object. And I'm willing to bet this one's just gonna be a little smidgen itchier, like maybe a 3. Because I can't tell right now if it's gonna be more rough or it's a bit more itchy. It's kind of hard to tell until you wear it. This is Stitched Up yarn. I think it's gonna be also like a 3 on the itchiness scale. This is Woolfolk 100% merino. This was my Christmas gift to myself because it was literally the softest yarn in the store. I've yet to work with this, but I'm guessing it's gonna be like a 1 to a 0. Like I cannot sense any itch from this hank. It could be, I guess in theory. I just can't imagine it being itchy at all. I'm so excited to make something with that. It was not cheap and I'm so happy about it. This is Lion Brand Kobu, which is a cotton bamboo viscose blend. And I cannot imagine this being itchy at all. It's gotta be like a 0 to a 1. There's no way. I also potentially bought it in the wrong color. I think it might be a little bit darker than I was hoping, so I might need to figure out what to do with this. I wanted to make I think it's the Gelma sweater. It's like a side-by-side sweater with this, we'll see. This is Loops and Threads Luxe Merino blend. It is a acrylic and superwash blend. I think it's like pretty close to 50-50. Yeah, 55% superwash merino, 45% acrylic. And I may have made a mistake buying this. I find it a little bit squeaky. I don't think it's itchy at all, but I bought a lot of this and I really wish I didn't. I really was lacking self-control at the time and I was buying lots of yarn because I was new to the world of like the budget yarns because I hadn't really explored that very much and I just really wanted to try all this stuff and I was like, there's no way I'm not gonna like this. And I touched it in the store and I loved it and like, I don't know what happened when I brought it home. I just was like, why did I buy this? I find it squeaky. I don't think it's gonna be itchy. It's probably like a 2 for itchiness, but it's definitely got that plasticky quality to it. And the last one in this section is Eddie Bauer Woolpaca. I've been really excited to try this. I am itching to give it a try. I don't think it's gonna be very itchy. It might be like a 3. I will definitely let you know in future videos once I work this up, but I don't think it's gonna be super itchy. Fingers crossed. Let's hope it's not. The next category is yarns that were described to me as not being itchy, and I found them to be very itchy. So first up, this one breaks my heart. It's Drops Alpaca. I bought a lot of this because there was a YouTuber who was like, I have sensitive skin and I don't find this itchy at all. And I bought a ton of it. Like this entire bag is just scraps that I have left over from various projects. So I bought a ton of it at the beginning. It's really budget friendly. So if you are not sensitive to like itchiness at all, like yes, absolutely go for it. This is probably like a 4 or 5 for me on the itchiness scale. It's sad because on the ball, it's incredibly soft and it doesn't feel very itchy. It's only when you work it up and wear it that it starts feeling itchy. And it's devastating. I love the colors. It's very saturated. It makes me really sad. So I'll need to come up with projects to do with these. This is an example of a project. My very first sweater and then this one, which is my 3rd sweater that I made. I'm so sad. I worked them up and they're itchy, which is, it devastates me because feeling it right now, I'm like, oh, this is so soft and squishy. I love it. But as soon as I put it on, it's just too itchy to wear. I want to make another one in a different yarn. I'm just trying to find a yarn that comes in these exact colors. I don't know what to do with this sweater though. I'd be heartbroken to give it away because I just love looking at it. And also if I did give it away to someone I know, the sleeves are really short and it's incredibly cropped. And I don't know anyone in my life that would, everyone's taller than me. I'm 5 foot, like, I was 5'0" in college and somehow grew 2 inches in college. So I'm 5'2" now. So I'm a short girl with a short torso. So all my stuff is really, really cropped. That was unnecessary detail for me to give. And then this one, this is the Sandnes Garn Tin Peer Gint Tweed. I'm gonna call this like a 7 on the itchiness scale. I said I was gonna make socks with it, but then someone got really upset with me and they're like, don't make socks out of that material. I don't know, I bought 2 or 3 balls of this and I don't want to wear anything made out of this, like anywhere but on my feet, because my feet are not super bothered by itchiness. Oh, okay, this one was devastating. This one really hurt. It was a gut punch. This is Drops Melody. It was described by a lot of people as being not itchy, especially for people. It's like a good alternative for mohair. If you're allergic to mohair, I don't know what the hell it is about this yarn. I am allergic to it. This is 71% alpaca, 25% wool, and 4% polyamide or polyamide. I also find it pretty itchy. It's like a 4. It's enough to bother me. I've tried. I've made so many projects with this, and on my most recent attempt in January, I was like, I'm gonna give it one last chance. And the entire time I was working on it for like a whole week, I was coughing and my eyes right now are starting to like water and I can feel it in my throat. I'm definitely allergic to this, but it's not like mohair itchy. So if you're not allergic to it and you also cannot handle mohair, this might be a solid alternative, especially because a lot of people recommend it. I bought a lot of it that I will sadly have to give away. And because I'm allergic to it, I have 3 different, like a finished object and 2 whips that people can unravel. Do you have any recommendations for where I can give those away? Because I'm allergic to it, I don't want to unravel them and get those fibers all up in the air and be inhaling that. So I'm just not prepared to unravel them myself, but it's perfectly usable yarn and there's quite a lot of it. So I don't know who to give that to. I need more people in my life that knit or crochet because I also don't feel like paying. Shipping is so expensive these days, y'all. It's so expensive. So I also don't feel like paying to ship this to people. I don't know what to do with it, but it's just gonna sit in this little timeout bag. A yarn I do not have on hand is Drops Brushed Alpaca, and I did find that to be a 4 on the itchiness scale. You are such a cute little baby, but I have to get up and look at my notes. So that's it for the specific yarn recommendations. I do have some other tips for people that have more sensitive skin. And I'm gonna cover some of the obvious ones too, so we can just make sure that we're covering all the bases. So the most obvious piece of advice is just to stay away from making projects that touch really sensitive parts of the body. Everyone has different areas that they find mostly sensitive, but in general, like the neck area, the chest, like upper body from collarbone and above tends to be really sensitive compared to the rest of the body. So if you have a yarn that's like just a little bit too itchy to be on the neck, consider doing a V-neck or a low scoop neck, maybe a cardigan that is designed to be open in the front if you really want to make a garment out of it. If you also have a yarn that's a little bit, again, too itchy for the neck, but is fine in other parts of your body, you could consider doing a double folded collar, which is like what this collar is. It's when you knit it twice as long as you want it to go, fold it over and sew it down or knit it down. And on the inner portion, use a different yarn that is a little more comfortable on your skin. That way the part that's actually physically touching your neck is not itchy, but you can still get the look of the other yarn. Using the same logic, you can do double layered mittens, hats, scarves, maybe not a scarf, like a cowl. I guess you could do a two-sided scarf where one side, like, and you sew them together where one side is like not itchy and the other is, and you like wrap it in such a way where, yeah, just double layered stuff where one layer is not itchy material and the other is like an itchier material. Again, just if you have stuff in your stash that you don't want to give away, you do want to use it. If something's like just over the edge of being too itchy for you, hold it double with another yarn that's way lower on the itchiness scale and give that a try and see if that helps bring it down to a more tolerable amount of itch. You can also consider washing, especially wools, in like a hair conditioner. Go with something unscented or like something not super perfumed with like irritating ingredients in it, just because it will be touching your body. I've done this before. It did help a little bit, but also don't expect it to work miracles. It's not going to be, some people are so dramatic about it and they're like, oh my gosh, it took this like Norwegian Highland wool and made it like butter. No, it didn't. It can bring it down like on the itchiness scale that I've been using. It can bring it down like one number maybe. But you also have to make sure that you're using a hair conditioner that's not irritating on your skin. Crocheters, cover your ears for a second. Knitting is typically less itchy than crochet just because of the nature of the crochet stitches. They tend to expose more of the ends. And so in general, if you do both hobbies and you have a yarn that's a little bit itchier, consider knitting with that instead of crocheting. And then for either craft, play around with different stitch types because certain stitch types are just gonna like seem more rough and itchy than other ones. So I personally want to make a garment that's purled on the outside and knit on the inside, just because a stockinette knit stitch lays a lot of the fibers pretty parallel and there's not a whole lot of exposed ends going on. You can go for a looser gauge. Again, when you have a looser gauge, you just have less ends than you would with a denser like fabric material that you're working up. And so it's just less ends to poke at you. I personally have not done this, but I have heard that soaking a finished object in like a diluted vinegar can help soften it up. I would look this up in advance and also just keep an eye, do some Googling for that one. Vinegar kind of freaks me out. I like using it. I use it to clean my house, like a diluted vinegar spray, but vinegar also scares me. Like its cleaning power is pretty good. So I'm like, what is going on with this substance that it's so powerful? Oh, you're so cute. Are you a little sleepy from beating up Mary? Yeah, you are. You got a little dandruff, but that's just because it's a little dry out this week. And you're a black cat, so the dandruff shows up like crazy. The sad reality is that if you're someone with really sensitive skin, your options for yarn are just gonna be more limited. The good news is you don't really need an endless abyss of yarn options. I personally, when I find a yarn that I really like, I like to stick with it. Play around with different yarns, maybe buy like just 1 or 2 balls at a time. Don't make the same mistakes as me, where you buy 10 balls of this freaking loops and threads, whatever, and now you have to figure out what to do with it. Start small. If you have crafty friends, ask if you can kind of try on some of their knits and maybe wear it for like an hour or 2 to see how it feels on your skin. And yeah, I have 2 requests for the comment section. Number 1, if I have mentioned a yarn and described it as being not very itchy, but you find it itchy, please say something so that other people know if they have more sensitive skin than me. And 2, if you are someone with sensitive skin, provide yarn recommendations. And if you can, could you pick a more common yarn and provide that as a reference when you're recommending a yarn? So for me, if I were to recommend like Drops Daisy yarn as being not very itchy, I would probably start with saying, I find Drops Air to be on the line between itchy and not itchy. That way we have a little context, because some people will be like, I don't find X, Y, and Z yarn very itchy, but potentially they wouldn't find a sweater made of human eyelashes all that itchy either.
It's a little itchy. What's this thing made of?
Eyelashes!
So it's all about context.
I made this one with my tears!
But I mean, I trust you in the comment section to say, like, if you know that you have really sensitive skin, then you can just say that and recommend a yarn. I think that's it. And I'm wondering if I should sit here for another hour while Pippin naps on my leg, or if I should move her. Pippin's really soft and not itchy at all. But I feel like if I tried spinning her hair, it might be a little bit itchy. I've been saving it in a jar. Oh yeah, because I always forget. My name is Isabella. You can like this video. That's your choice. I'm not gonna make you. Very minimal effort on your part. Unless you're like really comfy right now and that would require like a whole lot of like reaching and swiping, then don't bother. You stay in your comfy little cocoon. And then subscribe if you want to see more videos, because otherwise you're just relying on YouTube to recommend me to you again. And the chances of that are not very likely. So you have to subscribe if you want to see my videos. Pippin's a really quiet cat, so we'll see if we can hear any purring. I can't hear her purring, but I can feel it. She's very subtle with her purring. Mary, when she's purring, you can hear her across the apartment.
Darte mis noches llenas